clarity before she accepts the Kiddushin that in fact this is worth 50. That was one version of the machlokes. The other version, which we briefly learned, was Ika de Amri, which is the second line from the bottom on the Zayin Hamad the Chol Dehu Nami Pli. Even the machlokes, if he said Haret Mekudeshes Li B'Choldu, even without pruta, now a nice piece of silk is surely worth more than a pruta. So why in the world would you need to evaluate it before the Kiddushin? Rabbi Yosef Amar Shava Kesef Hareu Kesef. We know that we treat Shava Kesef just like Kesef, and therefore you could be Mekadosh a woman with it. But like Kesef, Ma Kesef, the kits, just like any currency, it's going to be known clearly what its value is because it has usually a number, a denomination on it. Av Shava Kesef Nami Dekayitz. So we learn, so too, that when you use Shava Kesef, it has to be clear what its value is, even if we know its value surely exceeds the minimum value that he said he was going to be Mekadosh and Isha with. Where do I know this from? The Tanya says in the pasuk, Mi Kesef Miknosai. Where does it say Mi Kesef Miknosai? It says this by Amavriya. If there's many years left in her Avdos, Lafin, according to those years, Yoshev Gulasai is how much she would have to pay to redeem herself. Mikasef Miknosai, from the Kesef that was used to buy her. So we learn the Kesef Hunitman. We learn that there's only Kesef is a way to be koina an Eved, or for an Eved to be koina themselves back. But you cannot use Shava Kesef. You cannot use product. So what is the Torah trying to tell us? That you cannot use product when you're buying an Eved. Hi tfu v'kelim hechidam. Exactly what is the circumstances under which the Torah doesn't allow it. If you're going to say that you cannot use any Shava Kesef for the Kinyan Kesef that you want to make on an Eved, it's not true. Because it says in the pasuk, Yoshev Geulasoi Amrachmana L'Rabbi Shava Kesef Kekesef. Rashi says that Yoshev Geulasoi is Yoshev's Kroy Yiserahu. It's an extra pasuk. The Malti L'Mechtav could have said Lefien Geulasoi L'Rabbi Shava Kesef L'Inyan Pidyon. If you could be paid with Shava Kesef, it knui nami mikli bei l'chsiv gulasoi b'kesef v'knosai. So the pasuk said, the pasuk could have said, "According to those years, that's how much you pay back." Why does the pasuk have to stick in gulasoi b'kesef v'knosai? Those are. I'm sorry. Why did I have to say Yoshev? Doesn't say Yoshev either. You could have said Why does it stick in the word Yoshev gulasoi? To tell you that Shava Kesef is Kekesef. So we have right here in the pasuk contradictory lemudim. There's the Yoshev to tell you that Shava Kesef is Kekesef, and there's the Mikesef B'Knosoi that tells you only cash. So Zog to Gemara, if the Shava Kesef that we're referring to has value to it, you cannot say that that's not usable for Kinyan Kesef because of the pasuk of Yoshev Gulasai. The last Shava Pruta, and if the Shava Kesef that we're discussing as to whether or not it could be used was Shava Kesef that's not worth a Pruta, then my Urya Tvu of a Caleb. Why are we only being Mamai Shava Kesef? Afilu Kesef Nami. Even if you had real money in a lower denomination than the Shava Pruta, that wouldn't work either. So we need to find out what miyut the Torah is telling us regarding Shava Kesef that makes sense. El Alav, if there is Shava Pruta, but the Chivin like Kaitzi loy, maybe what the Mikesef Mekosna is telling you is not that you cannot use Shava Kesef, because Yoshev Gulasai says you could use Shava Kesef. But maybe Mikesef Mekosna is telling you that the only type of Shava Kesef that you could use is Shava Kesef that's clearly defined what its value is. So this is where Rabbi Yosef got it, that even though he only said, I'm going to give you a Shava Pruta to be Mekadosh you, and he gave her silk that's surely worth more than a Shava Pruta. Nevertheless, it has to be assessed, and the exact value has to be determined in advance of the Kiddushin in order for the Kiddushin to be Chal. We do have a Bar Plukta who holds that it does not have to be defined in advance. Hachikamar, this is what he would use the Bikesef Meknasoi to be Mamayit Shava Kesef, and he would be memayit as follows: b'toyres kesef unikna ve'nikna b'toyres tfua v'kelim. You can be koina an isha with kinyan kesef, but you cannot be koina an isha with the type of kinyan that's called that's the way you buy tvu and kelim. How do you normally buy tvu and kelim? Umayniu chalipin. So all the pasuk is teaching us is that you cannot be koina an isha with kinyan chalipin. But if you use kesef, we don't have to clearly define the value of the kesef before the kedushin. Let's have a look at Rashi. B'toyres kesef, b'toyres domim hunikna. If you're giving shava kesef, but you're giving it because of its value to create a kinyan kesef, ben shenoisnol of kesef, ben shava kesef, b'toyres domim aknu, it will work. But if you gave shava kesef and you wanted to work with toyres chalipin, then it will not work. V'loy b'toyres chalipin, shederech lasos chalipin b'tfu v'kelim. So I made a mistake just a moment ago. What I said was you buy tvu and kelim with chalipin, but that's incorrect. That's one of the Rishonim suggest that to answer a kasha. But what the Gemara is directly saying is that tvu and kelim are things that you use for the chalipin. You'll give tuah instead of the handkerchief that the Rav gives us. They used to use tvu and kelim to do chalipin with. Shederech lasos chalipin b'tvu v'kelim. Kelim shenemar shalof ishnaloi. You see by the chalitza in Rus they used kelim like a baguette. Utfu nami dichsiv kol dover. So beautiful. Now we have two limudim. Either you learn from the pasuk that you could not use shava kesef unless it's assessed in advance, or you learn that you're not allowed to make a kinyan chalipin, or a kinyan chalipin will not work to be kohen isha. Break the Gemara. Will Rav Nachman the Amar Peres loy of the chalipin? It's according to Rav Nachman, where he holds you could not use Peres for chalipin. Rav Nachman says, Rashi speaks out, Perek Azov, Peri loy avdi chalipin. Nachman learns that you cannot make a kinyan chalipin with Peres. So if I give you Peres with which to be kind of your chametz, right, it wouldn't work. Im nasan tfuah b'toyres chalipin, kamoy suder. Instead of giving a dirty handkerchief, you gave Peres, liknesh ben soda, or shum davar b'chalipin, loikanu would not work. The high kol davar mefarish lei, the kol nikna b'minil. He'll go right. But that Rashi referring to something else. But if you hold that Peres love the chalipin, well then when you read this pasuk, you can't say that this pasuk is coming to be memayit, Peres, tfu and kelim, mitoris chalipin. You know why? You can't say it's using tfu and kelim to say that for kedushin you can't use chalipin, because the pasuk cannot be referring to any type of chalipin at all, because you cannot do chalipin at all with tfu and kelim. So what if you don't use this pasuk to teach you that the value of the shava kesef that you're giving has to be defined, like Rabbi Yosy learns? How else are you going to learn pshat in the pasuk? You can't say that the pshat in pasuk is that you can't be koina a woman with teres tfu kelim with chalipin, because chalipin is not teres tfu kelim, because Reb Nachman told you can't even use tfu and kelim to make a kinyan chalipin. So Michael Maimer, the less buhu shava pruta. It must be that the pasuk is referring to a case where there's no shava pruta, and that's where the machlokes is. Udika amrit my area tfu v'kelim afilu kesef nami. If you're going to ask me a kasha, why do I need a pasuk to tell me that if the tfu and kelim is less than a shava pruta, that it works, that it doesn't work? I'm sorry, that it doesn't work. No kinyan kesef works with a less than a shava pruta. So again, we cannot be referring to chalipin according to Reb Nachman, because you can't use tvua for chalipin. So it must be coming to be mamayit that it won't work, but Torah's kinyan kesef. And if we're talking about less than the shava pruta, because if it's more than the shava pruta, we've already established that it will work. If it's less than the shava pruta, why would I need a pasuk to tell me that if you give a shava kesef that's worth less than the shava pruta, it won't work for kedushin? Even kesef doesn't work for kedushin if it's less than the shava pruta. Rabbi, we equate Amavriya. I guess we're assuming so, because the halachas of kinyonim are parallel between an Amavriya and kinyan kesef, a kedusha kesef. That's a good point. Who said that there's a threshold of a shava pruta? I hear. So zok to Gemara, u'de kamid my ear tvil klim of kesef nami, zok to maloi bin boy kamer. It's a bigger chiddush that shava kesef of less than a shava pruta doesn't work than actual cash, because there's a certain perspective, certain angle where shava kesef is actually better than kesef. Let me buy kamer, lo mi buy kesef. The is b'shava pruta in iloi loi avol tfu kelim emami de karbahana sayu. Since you don't have to go shopping in the store, what you have product that's already available to be used. There's actually an advantage to that. So maybe gomer umakanafshe. Yes, for a less than a shava pruta of cash, so you won't be mekadosh yourself. But for a geshmaka ayer kichel, it's worth less than a shava pruta, but that's something I could use it right now. Gomer umakanafshe. Therefore, kamash malon. And when I learned this Gemara, it always triggers in my head one of the shmuzin that Rabbi Avram Galambik used to give. You know what I'm talking about? When he spoke about Nachamish Gamzu, the story went that he was traveling and he encountered an ani, and the ani asked him for food, and he ran to his car to open up the cooler to give the ani food, and by the time he did that, the ani had died on him. And that's why he took upon himself all these terrible, I think that was the case, took upon all these terrible things. So what did he do? What did he do wrong? He should have kept an ayr kichel in his pocket. Like we had to eat in the Bismillah, he used to keep a bilkit in his pocket. Why? So if he would run into an ani between the Bismillah and his house, quickly he can give him right away. So he wasn't thinking about it. So if he would have had money in his pocket, so it has to be something the makar v'hanaisa. So okay, so now we have two pshatim in what the miyut of Mekesef Knosoi to exclude Shava Kesef. Either according to Yosy to exclude Shava Kesef that's not clearly defined, or according to the Chachamim, it's to exclude Shava Kesef that's less than Shava Pruta, because I would have thought Shava Kesef worth less than Shava Pruta is still something that a woman would be happy to accept as her Shava Kesef Kiddushin. Okay. Now, Shlomi mentioned under his breath when Rav Nachman said that you cannot use pears for chalipin, but so Shlomi said, but maybe Kalim you could use for chalipin, right? Now, if that's the case, would that undermine the whole kasha? Because why don't you say it's speaking about Kalim? It's not speaking about pears; it's speaking about Kalim. Right? It sounds like they're going to be the same. Otherwise, there's no kasha anymore. Right. I'm not sure. But if kalim are still good for chalipin, so then we have the same kasha. So there is a kalim. I hear. I'm not sure. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef. The reason why I had made a mistake when I originally said you buy it with chalipin instead of you use it for chalipin is because there are shonim that for this kasha and say, yeah, maybe you could be speaking about chalipin, or they ask the kasha, what's shver from Rav Nachman? Rav Nachman just says you cannot use kalim as the thing that I'm giving for the chalipin, but maybe teres kalim and teres pears means what you buy it with, and you could buy pears and you could buy kalim with chalipin. You just can't use them as the object. You can't use them as the shmata. So I'm Rabbi Yosef. Where do I know this from? That it has to be clearly defined. The Tanya. So we're going to bring now another makar that the money has to be clearly defined. The value of what you're giving has to be clearly defined. The Tanya we learned. Egel zeh lepidyon b'di. I have to be poidin my son. Normally it's 5 sloim. I'm going to give this little calf to the kohen instead. Or talis zeh lepidyon b'di. I'm going to give him this talis. Lo yamar klum. It won't be a good pidyon. But egel zeh b'chamesh shloim lepidyon b'di. If he specifies this egel that's worth 5 shloim, I'm going to give the pidyon b'ni, or talazu b'chamesh shloim the pidyon b'ni, then b'noi padon. Fragt gemar high pidyon hechidam. Let's again get down to the bottom of what happened with this egel. Ilema deloy shavi. What if it wasn't worth 5 shloim? He just said egel zeh b'chamesh shloim, but it wasn't really worth 5 shloim. Call kibinei. Could he make a magic? Even if he says b'chamesh shloim, how does that change anything? It's still not worth 5 shloim. Elalav. Aval gav de shavi, even though it's worth 5 shloim, if he says it's worth 5 shloim and he clarifies that the value of this object is 5 shloim, but if not, even though it was worth 5 shloim, it would not be a good pigeon. Even like hatzi, loy. So you have a raya from here, from this brisa, that it has to be clearly evaluated in advance of the transaction. So you might not have a raya from there. Let's say it was not worth 5 shloim. But v'chiven the kabel koini luye, it's speaking where the koin accepted. So really, you have an egel that's not worth 5 shloim. But when the father speaks out, this egel I'm giving you for 5 shloim, what he's asking the koin is, it's not worth 5 shloim, but please accept it in lieu of 5 shloim. And when the koin accepts it, he's showing that he's agreeable. He had Rav Kahana. You find Rav Kahana, who was a koin, what he would receive, what he would accept to be paid a bechor was shakal shudra mibei pidyon aben. He would often take a shmata in lieu of 5 shloim, and the Amar Lay, he told him, even though it might not be worth that much, to me it's worthwhile because I happen to need sudras. Because kohanim are choshev, they keep their hair covered more, they keep their face, they keep their heads covered or their hair covered more. So to them, being that they need them more, there's a little bit of a higher value connected to the shmata than they are. So they can't just take anything that's useless to say l'didi. It has to be within reason, as we'll see in the Gemara. Second, Amar Bashi le Amar Elakun Rav Kana the Gavarabahu umiboyele sudra reisha. A Gavarabba who doesn't go begilu yarosh, he requires a sudra, so to him it has slightly higher value. Avukula Amar loy, but for anybody else where there's really no value in it, you can't just make up a value and say I accept it as that. He heard the Ma'bar Avashi Zavan Sudri me'emud Rabba. He would buy a sudr to cover his head. He was a Gava Rabba from the mother of Rabba, Mekubi in the city of Kubi. Shavi Asar bit later. He would pay 12. He would pay an extra 20% for the product. He would pay 12 for something that was worth 10. So it's not unlimited that he can evaluate it, but he'll pay a little bit more because there's value in it. So I'm sorry. Sure. So I once said over a story about this European at the turn of the century who could no longer handle the pogroms and the difficulties for a Yid to live in Europe. So he decided he's going to move to the Golden Medina. So he is a Shmuel. This is compliments of your sefer. So he was no big Talmud. He was a shoemaker there, but he came to America and he knew how to read Hebrew. So he became a dayan, became a ruv. So he became a big ruv, and he had siblings. His family stayed back, of course, in Europe. They didn't want to go to the Taifa Medina. One day, his brother says, I wonder how my brother's doing. I want to look him up, and I'm going to go visit him. So he looks him up, he gets his address, and he goes to visit him. And picked the address that he was given was the address of the shul where his brother was the Rav. So he comes into the shul and he sees his brother, the Amauditz, the cobbler, who barely knew Aleph Beis, is sitting there over noon, the Prophet V'yaruv. So he starts laughing. And you're Ruv, go connect to Aleph Beis. So his brother says, you're going to blow my cover. Don't tell anybody what I really am. And he thinks, maybe in America, maybe he sat and learned, maybe he became a Shulchan Aruch. After davening, there was a pidyon aben. And his brother was the coin, and he took the 5 coins. So he said, but a coin is the kaibel there. So how can you be the coin? So the brother said, be there the bechor beneath a coin. Zok Gemara Vater. Amar Rabbi Lazar, his kachuli b'mana. So he did. So he accepted the egel. So Rav Kahana said, to me it was worth 5 shloim. He didn't say he did that. Amar Rabbi Lazar, his kachuli b'mana. What if a man tells a woman, be mekudeshes to me with a mana? And then what does he give her? V'nasan la dinner. He gave her a dinner which is only worth 1/100th of a mana. The loch is harezel mekudesh. We consider that mekudeshes v'yashlim, and of course he'll owe her the money as a tanai. My time. We're obviously considering it not that the moish kedushin is a mana, because there was no moish kedushin of a mana. But he must have meant to say, I'll be mekadesh you al menas, that I will give you a dinner. My time. Even the dinner, from the mere fact that he said, I'm going to be mekadesh you with a mana. And right then and there, he gave her a dinner. It must be command the amallah almanastab. It must be that he told her almanas. If it's merely a t'nai, as long as sometime in the future the t'nai gets fulfilled, the kedushin will be good. But the moish kedushin itself was nothing more than a shava pruta. And we know Rav Huna said in the name of Rav that Almanas is Kaimim Ma'achshav, which means the Kedushin will be Tal right now, as long as sometime in the future the T'nai is fulfilled. What if someone said Hiskachli B'mana, which is exactly the same case that we've just discussed? But there's differences. He was counting out the mana. And before he finished counting out the full mana, and one of the two wanted to back out, until the last dinner is counted out and given over to the woman, either one could back out. In other words, the Kedushin is not chal. So we just said when someone says Hiskachli B'mana and you don't give it to her right away, we say it's Almanas, which means the Kedushin is chal right away, and as long as sometime in the future he's Mekayim D'Tnai, she's Mekudeshes. Here you see until the last dinner is paid up, there's no Kedushin. So Gemara, the Amar B'mana Zuhu. You know why in the Brisa that we just asked from, he could be Chayzer up until the last second, because he didn't say Hiskachli B'mana. He said Hiskachli B'mana Zu. So this has to be a mana. If this is not a mana, in fact, she will not be Mukadeshes. Correct, Gemara, it cannot be, because this Brisa we just quoted has a sefer to it, and the sefer is speaking by Mana Zu. The sefer b'Mana Zu, Reshim must be b'Mana Stam. The Katani sefer Amar Lo Hiskachli B'mana Zu. And it turned out that it wasn't a complete mana, or there was a coin in it that wasn't a good coin, it was nechoshes. It doesn't want to work. Dinner ra, what if I had a bad dinner? And the Gemara is going to explain what a dinner ra means. Dinner ra harezim mekudeshes. The Yaakov, they'll just swap it out with a better dinner. So you see clearly that that's manazu, but the ratio was monestam, and nevertheless it's not like a t'nai. And rather we say that until the last of the mana is fully paid, either one could be chayzer, unlike what we just said from the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Dr. Marloy, Reisha v'Sefer Damar b'Manazu. Both cases, both the Reisha and the Sefer of this price is Manazu, and therefore it's not shver at all to Rabbi Eliezer. Ufruje kamafarish, and the Sefer is merely elaborating on the halacha stated in the Reisha. It says in the Reisha, Ratza echad mem lachzer afilu b'dinner acharon parshas biyadai ketzad. Let's explain exactly how this works. Going to Amrla b'Manazu. Speaking, we said b'Manazu. And forget the kash on Rabbi Eliezer. Even if we didn't have to defend Rabbi Eliezer, just learning Pashup Shot in the Brisa would demand that that's how we explain the Brisa. If you're going to learn that the Reisha, speaking in the case of Manastam, Hashta b'Manastam will have a Kedushin. If the Reisha says that even in the case of Manastam, the Kedushin is not chal until the last is paid up, why do we need the Sefer to say b'Manazu? B'Manazu mipoy? If you even said Manastam, we say you have to be fully paid before the Kedushin is chal. So then the Sefer is completely redundant. Zok Gemara, no. Imishim hala area. That wouldn't be a problem in and of itself, because Tana Sefer l'gli Reisha. It's very common that the Tana will write a Sefer so that it'll be clear what the Reisha is talking about. Shaloi time a Reisha b'Manazu, Aval b'Manastam have a Kedushin. Therefore, Tana Sefer b'Manazu michlal the Reisha b'Manastam. Really, that's what you could say. Vafilu achi will have a Kedushin, and still it wouldn't be a Kedushin. So therefore, you cannot bring me a raya. You can't bring me a raya that the Reisha is b'Manazu, Reisha could be b'Manastam. And it's the Sefer l'gli Reisha. Rabashi says, Moine v'haylach shayim. So let's go back to the original kasha. We had a kasha from the Brisa. You, Rabbi Eliezer, said that if someone said Hiskachli b'mana, it's mukadeshes right away, and the chiyuv to give the money is only a tanai, which you could do later. The Brisa says the kedushin's not chal until the last dinner is paid up. Rabashi Amar Moine v'haylach shayim. It's not speaking where he said manazu. He said manastam, but he's actually counting out the money now. If I said Hiskachli b'mana and I just gave you a dinner and that's it, it's obvious I only meant it as a t'nai, and she accepted it that way. But if I said Hiskachli b'mana and I'm counting it out, it's obvious that what I mean to do is that I'm being mekalit you with the mana because I'm counting it out right now. Moine v'haylach shayim, the daita kulei. So now the Gemara says, okay, now we have two pshatim, everything's fine. Let's delve a little bit into the price. One of the issues with the Brisa was there was a dinner shel nechoshes in the mix, which the Brisa says disqualifies it. That's not called a proper money, it's deficient. If she knew that it was in the bunch and she accepted it, well then hasavar v'kibla. Why is that a problem? She accepted the kedushin. Either gave it to her at night so she didn't realize that one of the coins was deficient, or they found it amongst the zuzim, no one realized it. So she never wanted to accept a deficient mana, but she didn't notice at the time. So that's something that would disqualify the Kedushin. Now there was a case of dinner ra. There was a case of dinner ra that also, oh, I'm sorry, I had my speaker shut off the whole time. So I don't even know if someone was saying anything because I had my speaker off. I'm sorry, it was kind of quiet. Okay. Hi dinner ra, heichidami. Because the Bryce, if it's a dinner ra and you wouldn't be able to buy something in the store with it, you wouldn't be able to do it in the use it in the bank. That is a dinner shal nechayches. So why do we say it's still a good kedushin? We should say it's not a good kedushin. Amar Papa kagon de nafak leidetchak. No, you could find someone who will accept it. It just be a little difficult. So therefore, technically the money is here, but since she's not so happy with it, we'll swap it out to give her a good one. Amar Rabba Amar Nachman. Amar Laskachli b'mana. He told her, "Be mukudeshes to me with a mana." V'niach la mashkin aleh. He didn't have the cash, so he gave her a mashkin. He gave her his watch. Hold on to this watch. Now he's not giving her the watch. It's just hold on to till I come up with the money. So has he given her any money? No, nothing at all. Ain't mukudeshes. She will not be mukudeshes. Why is Dr. Gemara? Very simple. Because mana ain't come, mashkin ain't come. Rashi says, since the mana is not here, he didn't give her any money. Therefore, the mashkin is not anything. Mashkin in yeshava klum shena mashkin matana. He's not giving her the mashkin. He's just giving her the mashkin to hold on to until he's just giving her the mashkin to hold on to until he'll give her the money. But right now, technically, he has given her nothing at all, so there's no case of kedushin. I'm sorry, but right now he didn't give her the mashkin. She doesn't have any kinyan whatsoever in the mashkin. But she doesn't have a kinyan in the mashkin. She's holding it for safekeeping, but she doesn't own it. She has no kinyan in it. So it's not enough that she should. It's not enough that it should be in her control and she has it as a just in case. She has to be coined it now in order for it to affect the kedusha. Yeah, so she has the security of it, but the fact is she has not acquired anything officially. So therefore, with what is the kedusha being chal? I'm sorry. Yeah, but the problem is, if there was already an existing chayiv, and then I give her the heina, it's one thing. But I'm giving her right now. It's right now that I'm giving her something. So there was nothing for me to secure first. So Zok to Gemara, Eisei Rav or Rabna. Kicha b'mashkin mikudeshes. So this is black and white, a direct stira to what we just quoted from Rab Nachman. Zok to Gemara, you know what type of mashkin Rava was talking about? Hasam b'mashkin da'acherim. You know what type of mashkin we're talking about? We're talking about a man who someone owed him money, and we bought someone owed him money. He took a mashkin from that person. He took that person's watch. That you are good. And with that watch, he gave to a woman to be Mekalisher. No, but this is not with her. We're going to soon see that when I take a mashkin from somebody who owes me money, I am koined. I'm actually koined, either according to some sheeters to be mechuyev v'noinchen. I actually have a kinyan. I'm mechuyev v'noinchen, or I'm chayiv on Gedei Veda. I actually have a kinyan. Correct. If a third party mashkin, a will work, then I am koined. Correct. Because I'm not, at this time, I'm not giving her anything. But that mashkin, she wouldn't be koined. Why? Why? Because the Gemara is going to make a distinction between a mashkin that's given to me at the time I borrow money, at the time that I lend money, versus a mashkin that I grabbed once a person already defaulted on this payment. So the mashkin that we're talking about that works is where someone owed me money, he hasn't paid me, and I seized one of his assets in lieu. That I'm koined. But if when I originally lend money, I take a mashkin, that's no different than this case. In fact, it might not work. But let's see, that's what we're going to have to discuss. And there's a machlokes Rashi tells us if it's lagabe oinsin or if it's lagabe vaveda, but there's kinyonim in it. When you give it back at night, let's say it's a beged shalayla, when you give it back at night, it's a tzedakah. Or if it's a beged shal yoim, if it's tools that he needs, as long as you give it back to the loiva to use when he needs it, it's a tzedakah. In fact, if it's his, If you were in koina, how is it a tzedakah that you're giving it back to? Mikan l'bachayv shekoina mashkin. So let's see Rashi. This is a huge sugya. The mashkin lechem zok Rashi. Shayi biyadai. He had a mashkin that he seized from somebody else. The kitcha b'chayv sheyesh le'alav. This mashkin that I'm holding represents the entire chayv that ploini owes me. Hilchach mikudeshes shamashkin atzmai kanila. There he's actually giving her the mashkin to be koina, unlike in our case where he's just giving it to her as a security. Okay, gewaltig. So let's see Tosfos. Tosfos elaborates a little bit on it. The man ein kan mashkin ein kan pirish. Yes, but that's going to change in just a minute. Not in the Gemara, in Tosfos. That's why I said it's a little bit complicated. And the reason why I'm not explaining the complication is because I'm not clear myself. But Tosfos, I want to look at Tosfos inside, so we'll get clarity. Pirish ve'eno mikudeshes l'visha isha niknes bekesef. To be called a woman, you need kesef. Via kesef eina be'en. There is no kesef over here. He hasn't given it to her. He gave her a promise that he's going to give it to her. So hey chikna she'eina mashkin tachas a kesef. You're not giving her the mashkin instead of the kesef. Kivin shelo yisha biyada isha. This mashkin will not remain in her hand. She's just holding on to it until he gives her the money. Makes her feel good. But it's nothing more than making her feel good. If he actually says that, she did the Mekudesh. But if he's saying, I'm not giving you the mashkin, I'm giving you money later on, but you can hold on to this to make you feel good, that's not good. That's not good. Okay. So I want to skip down a little bit to a lower Tosfos. Mashkin da'chei bituk. Frek Tosfos, avagav de bituk ari b'mashkin shaloi b'shas halva. Rabbi Yitzchak was only speaking about a mashkin that was shaloi b'shas halva, which means a person defaulted already, and then you went and seized it. That's where Rabbi Yitzchak said b'chayv k'nei mashkin. Nevertheless, matzinu l'meimar, even the b'chayv k'nei mashkin shaloi b'shas halva kinyan gomer achiyivta. Since Rabbi Yitzchak says that a mashkin that you seized when someone defaulted on his loan, that you're koine kinyan gomer, it would then also tell us that b'shas halva nami, if you took a mashkin at the time of halva, alim shibudei lechashiv mammon lekadosh boy isha v'litnais boy avodim v'karkais. Even if I'm demanding a mashkin, when I make the loan, there's also some level of bailus that I have in it with which I can be b'kadosh and isha. But when you're just giving a lady a mashkin, and there's no choifer, there's nothing here, you're just telling her that you plan to give her something later, that's not giving her anything now. Even if you're promising to give her money later, there's no shibud on you. She has no kinyan on you. If I lend you money so that you're to pay me up, if I just tell you, Mati, I owe you money, it doesn't accomplish anything. Although that's a big machlokes rishonim, which involves the sugya. There's a big machlokes rishonim. The Rambam holds, if I walk up to you and say, Mati, I owe you $100, there's actually a shibud that's chal that I owe you. But let's not work with the Rambam now, it's going to be too confusing. But most rishonim hold, I can't just generate with my words a chiyuv. I owe you $100, suddenly you have a shibud. Doesn't work that way. So therefore, by me just giving her a mashkin and saying I'm planning to pay you, I haven't really given her anything at all. And what if he said, Bahi, I'm not that I'm telling you, maybe that would work. But we're talking about someone saying I'm being mekadesh you with the money, not with the Bahi no. So in fact, the Bahi no might work. Okay, so that is the shayla. So at the end of the day, a third-party mashkin works. Your own mashkin does not work because you haven't really been giving her something right now. Talk more about it. The children of Rav Huna bar Avin went and purchased an Amma Ivriya. What did they use? Bepriti with prutos. I guess she didn't do much work. And they didn't even have the cash to purchase her with. So what they did was they gave him a bar of silver to hold temporarily, not at the purchase, just to make sure that the fellow's going to get paid. By the time they came out with the cash, the value of the Amma went up already, and the question is, was there a king? They went to Rabami to ask a shayla. Amalu priti einkan naska einkan. You didn't give him pruta. The naska you never gave him to be told as a kinyan. You just gave it to him for safekeeping, exactly mirrored to the story that Reb Nachman told us. You didn't give her the money, and the mashkin you didn't give her to be koine. You just gave it to them as safekeeping. Therefore, the kinyan kesef has not occurred, just like the kinyan kiddushin has not occurred. And if the value went up, you have to pay the higher value. Taner Rabbanan, his gachli b'mana, be mekalish to be with a mana. There's a very famous story where a bacher was going out on a date with a girl, and they stopped by a red light. And by the red light, the girl takes the keys, takes them out of the ignition. And the light turns green. People are honking. And he looks at her and says, like, can I have the keys back, please? So she says, no. He says, they're honking. The green light's like dangerous. Please, can I have the keys? And she gives him the keys and says, you know what? I wanted to see if you're a Kaizen. You passed the test. He says, it's wonderful. You flunked. Right? There's a famous story with that. So look at this story. Hiskachali b'mana. Natalso, she took the mana, v'zarkasal and she threw it into the yam. Or she threw it into the fire. Oven. Any way that it will be destroyed. Break the Gemara. If she just threw it on the floor in front of him, have a kedushin. There you're going to say it would be a kedushin. Didn't she basically say, take it, I don't need it? It's true. That wouldn't either be a kedushin. But let me buy come. Let me buy should have to have a kedushin. It's partial that if she threw it down in front of him, that it wouldn't be a kedushin. I was a kosteliyam or maybe a makivin the mechayev the balt she'll be mechuyev to pay him. If she doesn't accept it as kedushin, she'll have to pay him the money. She damaged him. Maybe kedusha kodesh nafsha. Why would she do something so stupid if she wants to become married to him? It was just a test. Kamash malam that no, she's not doing the kedushin because she already knows that she flunked the test. So maybe it can't be a kedushin anyway, and therefore that's not pshat in the Gemara. Kamash malam that it's not a test. She did something stupid, and it won't be a good kedushin. Tell me about it. It's gachali bit moneh. Please be mekudeshes to me with this money. And she says, name Abba, give it to my father. Lavicha, give it to your father. Ain't no mekudeshes. Well, what if she said, Almanas yikablum li? What if she said, Almanas that your father accepts it on my behalf? Almanas that my father accepts it on my behalf. Then it's mekudeshes. Zok to Gemara, and Rashi explains why. Because the Gemara is going to explain a little bit more. Because basically she's saying, I want them to be makabel for me. She's not saying it out of scorn. It said Abba, even in a case, Abba is her own father. If she just said, give it to my father, even though it's your father, so maybe if she really wants to accept the kedushin, that it's not a good kedushin, even if she instructed the man to give it to her father. And even though she said that he should be makabel for me, so you might think that she doesn't want it. Kamash Malon, she does want it, even if it's her father-in-law that she's instructing to keep the money. Because the svara is, if she's telling him to give it to his father, that's more of a rejection. But since she said it in such a way, Almanashi Kablam Li, that even if it's her father-in-law, she's accepting it. What if you said Skachli B'mana, I'm sorry, and her response was to name Laploini. Give it to a third party, not your father, not my father, a stranger. Ain't Mukadeshes. But Almanashi Kablam Li is Mukadeshes. Utricha. These cases are also chedushim. Yesh min Abba Vavicha Hasamu Dechi Amra Almanashi Kabali have a kedushin. There's some chadaitulu. Maybe the case of my father or even my father-in-law, if I say Almanashi Kabali, which is a sign that she wants the kedushin, there it's a good kedushin because they know who she is. She knows who they are. She trusts them. So Savra Abdin Lishluchotai. They're going to do it on my behalf. Abu Pliny, who I have nothing with. Maybe even if I say I'm not Kabbalah, I don't mean it because why would I trust some stranger to be Mekabel my kedusha? V'yashmin and Pliny, and if we were only told in the case of Pliny is halacha, then I would say Hakahu Dechi Amr Tem Pliny plain have a kedusha. I have nothing to do with him. Why would she want him to just take it? Why would she want to give it to them? No reason. So therefore, for sure, that's not a good kedusha. The Makar B'Daita, since she knows them, so maybe she's accepting kedushin when she's asking him to give it to one of these people instead. That's when we need both. We need both. He said, "Be mekodesh to me with hamana to name al gabe sela. Put it on top of a rock. Ain't mekudeshes. It's not mekudesh. If the rock belonged to her, then it would be mekudeshes. Rashi says it's totally in if she's koined b'kinyan chotzer or not. Tosfos does not like that pshat. So Tosfos says it's nothing to do with chatzera. The reason why it's sela, zok Tosfos, v'nir lefarish doch hatam mentally b'kinyan chatzera, elakashashela shalah. If it's Iraq, some chadaitam. It means she wants to accept it. If I just told you to put it, you just crawled out from under a rock, put it on a different rock. right? Then loy sam chadaita. So just a question of an indication of what her kavanah is. Does she want the marriage or does she not want the marriage? So Zok Gemara, if it tells her name out, Zok Gemara take his kachli bekikar. He said, "Please be mekadesh. I'm going to give you a kikar. Give it to a dog. Ain't a mekadesh. She's not mekadesh. That's clear that's a rejection. But if it was her dog that he instructed this man to give it to, then it would be mekadesh. Boy of Mori. What if it was kelav ratzach? There's a dog running after her to bite her, and he said, "I read mekadesh bekikar," and she said, "Give it to the dog." Does that mean she's not interested? Or maybe Mao ba hu ano the kamatl nafsha minei gomer makal nafsha. The about he's saving her life by feeding the dog. Therefore, the dog won't bite her. So that's enough of a note that she'll be mekabel kedushin. Ideal mamatzi amalei. That's not a kedushin. Midei raisa chayuv mechayvis latzulam. You're mechuyev to save me anyway. So I'm not giving you a free kedushin out of that. Too bad. Take his his kachali v'kika t'nei l'ani. She should give it to an ani. Any mukadesh. Even if it was an ani who she would normally give money to. My time. She would tell him, just like I have a responsibility to be Mefrancis Ani, so do you as well. This is not a kedushin. This is something that you have to give anyway. Okay, let's stop here and we'll be Ramshach Bez Hashem tomorrow.